Welcome to the Witchy Work Wishes podcast, a place to find your weekly inspiration for bringing your personal witchcraft practice into your business, work, and office. Welcome to Witchy Work Wishes. We are stepping into the wheel of the year today and our bright and sunny summer solstice. Today is all about Litha, the longest day of the year, the moment when the sun reaches its highest point in the sky and just kind of seems to hang out there for a little bit, just standing still for a while before beginning its slow journey back towards the darkness. Now, if you've been with me for a while, you know this is not our first Litha together. We have gathered around this particular fire a few times now. We have talked about bonfires and herbs and flowers, abundance and celebrations, and a little bit of sun magic. I know I have previously mentioned outdoor rituals and all of the beautiful traditions that make this Sabbath so loved by many, many witches. I love every single one of those things too. But this year, like with our other Sabbaths so far, part of that comes from the conversations we've been having lately. We just spent time exploring the Witch Father and the Sacred Masculine. We talked about protection and responsibility, guidance and boundaries, and the kinds of strength that help us flourish in life rather than, control it. I'm still not 100% sure that episode flowed as well as I'd hoped. Thank you, though, for the nice comments. But it is out there. And as I sat with that episode and thought about Litha coming up, I thought about, the powerful expressions sacred masculine energy has on the entire wheel of the year. I'm not talking about modern conversations around masculinity. I'm not talking about, men versus women or that one energy is better than the other. You guys already know I'm all about balance. But today, and, for this type of energy, I'm thinking more in lines about like the sun itself, the great life giver, the force that, coaxes seed from the earth and turns tiny little sprouts into thriving gardens, the warmth that allows life to exist, the provider of light and protector against the cold, against the darkness of winter. The sun in the sense that it is the steady presence that rises every single morning, whether we notice it or not. We spend a lot of time talking about the moon, and rightly so. Moon magic is woven into so much of what we do. But today I really do want us to spend some time sitting beside the other ancient teacher, the sun. Because at Litha, the sun is at its greatest strength, and it's a wonderful time to celebrate all aspects of it. But first, some things happening in my little corner of the world. I mentioned a possible merger involving my company last week. In my corporate world, right now has a lot of moving parts in it. It's exciting and overwhelming and just full of possibility. We had the big meeting, and I am happy to report that it went very, very well. It was one of those conversations that will absolutely help shape the next chapter of my business. There's still more to review, numbers to crunch, and decisions to make before any formal offers are on the table. So we are not done yet, but I do want to tell you about the morning before the meeting because my Crow Tarot deck did its thing once again. For our space here at Witchy Work Wishes and our Patreon family, I primarily work with animal oracle cards. Every month I pull a card and create worksheets, spells, and grimoire packets that help us explore the energy of that spirit animal together. But for my personal space and practice, when I'm looking for guidance around a specific event, decision, or question, I almost always reach for my Crow Tarot deck. Now, the morning of the meeting, I was grabbing one more coffee before the drive, but I wanted to pause and center myself first. I wanted to ground my energy and just get a sense of what the day might hold. So I lit a little incense, I grabbed my deck, and sat quietly for a moment thinking about the meeting that was less than an hour away. Now, you guys know I'm very consistent with how I shuffle and pull cards. I think most of us become that way after working with our decks for a while. We find our rhythm, right? So that morning was no different. I held the deck for a few moments, focused on the meeting ahead, and went through my normal 3 shuffle routine before setting the cards down. Now, once I draw a card, that is the card. I do not redraw. I do not go searching for a different answer. well, okay, hold on, hold on. Once I did. One time back in January, I pulled the Moth Spirit card, and I had an incredibly strong feeling that the message was not meant for us as a community. It really felt incredibly personal. It felt like it belonged in my own personal year ahead. So I reshuffled then. I did pull a different card then, but the card I pulled was the Butterfly Spirit. That's what ended up coming forward for all of us instead, which felt remarkably aligned since the butterfly and the moths carry such similar themes of transformation. I knew immediately that separating those two messages had been the right choice. But other than that one exception, the card that appears is the card I keep. Now, usually I split the deck and pull the top card on the bottom half. Occasionally, I am drawn to a card underneath or one that's, kind of sticking out. The process is not rigid, but the trust is for sure. And last Wednesday, there was a card slightly poking out from the deck. Like I saw it, I noticed it, but I felt drawn to the top card on the bottom half instead. So I turned it over and I drew the sun. Oh my goodness, you guys, I just started giggling, like laugh out loud type of giggling. Because if there is a card that embodies confidence, clarity, visibility, success, vitality, and, stepping fully into your own light, it is the sun. And that morning, the Witch Father episode also aired. The episode where we talked about solar energy and masculine energy, leadership, protection, and the power of, showing up fully as yourself. Suddenly, everything clicked. The message felt incredibly clear. Hey, show up, be visible, trust what you have built. And then another layer revealed itself. My father passed away on June 7th last year. The meeting happened on June 10th. And my father is just a huge, huge reason why I actually own my own company today. He was an exceptional business leader. He understood how to build organizations, how to lead people, and how to create something sustainable over time. He taught me so much about business responsibility and perseverance. Standing there holding the sun card, preparing for one of the biggest meetings my company has had in quite a few years, I could not help but feel his presence. It just all came together. And then guess what? If that was not enough, one of my employees sent me a picture of her fortune cookie message that she got the night before. It read, "A friend's success will benefit you." So she was sending a bunch of energy of, like, we've got this type of messages in the morning too. And I really just had to smile. The Witch Father episode airs, the sun card appears, my father's energy was everywhere. A fortune cookie starts talking about shared success. Amazing, right? The timing was almost too perfect. Now, I do not think tarot cards predict the future, not necessarily, but I do think they help us pay attention to what we need to know. They help us to notice patterns and listen. And sometimes they remind us of things we already know. We know them deep down, but we just need to hear them one more time. That morning, the sun reminded me to step fully into my own light, to trust what has been built, trust the people standing beside me, and maybe, just maybe, to trust that some of the lessons my father taught me are still, in fact, guiding the path ahead. Sun energy, sacred masculine energy, and my Crow Tarot deck all having my back yet again. So let's see, this past weekend brought us the beautiful dark moon of June. Our new moon arrives on Monday, and while I did my normal work with all of you, I recorded, edited, and posted so our Patreon family could get their early release on Sunday. I spent most of the weekend resting. Well, most-ish. There was some yard work. There was some housework. There was definitely some nesting and reorganizing after the big paint project I recently finished. But overall, I really tried to focus on slowing down. And that was harder than I expected. Last week, while we were talking about the Witch Father and all of this solar energy building around us right now, I had a little personal breakthrough. I realized that I have been living with a tremendous amount of masculine energy for a very long time. Some of it was necessary, of course, right? Some of it was survival. Some of it was simply the reality of raising children and running a business. paying bills, solving problems, and, carrying responsibilities that needed to be carried. And if you are anything like me, when you live in that type of energy for too long, rest can start to feel uncomfortable. It can feel unproductive and, like undeserved. It can feel like you should be doing one more thing, answering one more email, checking one more task off the to-do list, and solving one more problem. It can be difficult to lay the sword down and give some of that energy back to yourself. But that has been one of the lessons unfolding for me in this past week and lately. The sacred masculine is not just about building and protecting. It's not just about leading. Healthy energy, whether it's masculine or feminine, it understands that growth requires recovery and effort requires replenishment. Even the sun, right? Even the sun eventually sets. And maybe that is part of what this season is teaching me right now. The journey that I am on is obviously being shared with you in real time. The episodes we explore are certainly not random. They're usually the things I'm personally working through, learning about, questioning, studying, and growing from myself. For 5 years now, I've been sitting down each week and sharing my notes with you. Almost like my journal. It really is. All the stuff I write down and take notes on, I turn around and share with you. My thoughts, my questions, my experiences, the lessons I'm learning and the books I'm reading, the mistakes I am making, as well as the things that are helping. So thank you. Oh my goodness. Thank you to every single one of you who chooses to spend part of your day here with me each week. Thank you for listening while I explore these ideas and ask my questions, share stories, and work through my own growth right alongside all of you. I know I get a little teary sometimes. I know I talk super fast sometimes. I know some of the episodes are more educational than emotional, but hopefully by the end of each year, they give you something. One of the things I love most about this podcast is that it has never really felt like I'm just teaching a topic. Some of our topics are things that are new for me too. It really feels much more like we're just walking a path together. We are learning together and growing together and celebrating together. Sometimes we're grieving together and occasionally trying to figure out what on earth the universe is attempting to teach us next. For those of you who are part of our Patreon family, thank you for supporting this work in such a direct and meaningful way. Your support helps make all of this possible. The worksheets, the grimoires, the spells, the extra content, the live gatherings now, the community that we are building together. None of this exists without you. And to everyone listening, whether you found this podcast years ago or this happens to be your very first episode, thank you. Really thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your stories with me. Thank you for your emails and messages and comments and encouragement. Thank you for trusting me enough to let me sit beside you on your walks, your commutes, and your morning coffee breaks. Thank you for letting me be with you on your moon rituals and your garden adventures and just all of those little moments in between. Sometimes I sit down to record these episodes and wonder if sharing my own experiences is the right thing to do. Oh gosh, and then I hear from one of you who says, "Hey, I thought I was the only one feeling that way." And then it reminds me why we do this. Because none of us are walking this path alone. So wherever you happen to be today, thank you for being a part of this little witchy family we have created here together. I appreciate you more than I could possibly put into words. And let's see, speaking of family, our very first live Hearth and Hen gathering happened in May, and I absolutely loved it. It was such a wonderful opportunity to sit down, talk about what we are experiencing, share stories, and connect in a way that just feels much more personal than an episode or social media post. So it is time to open the doors again for our June gathering. And if joining sounds like something you would enjoy, head over to witchyworkwishes.com, our website, and take a look at the Hearth and Hen information. You'll find everything you need to know about becoming part of the circle, about upcoming gatherings, and how to join us. I love that this community just continues to grow while still feeling warm and welcoming and genuine. It truly does feel like friends gathering around a kitchen table to talk about life and magic and seasons and our victories and our struggles and just everything else in between. I would absolutely love to see you there. But, check things out first over on the website and then reach out if you have any questions. I was going to talk a little bit about the book I'm currently reading, but since it ties so well into next week's episode, I think I'm going to hold off for now. Let's jump into today's conversation because whether we realize it or not, all of these threads we've been talking about, the sun card, leadership, rest, community, family, growth, gratitude, and trusting what we have built, they are all woven into the season that we are standing in right now. The wheel of the year is carrying us towards Litha and Summer Solstice, the longest day, the shortest night, the moment when the sun reaches its greatest strength and brightest expression. Oh, and a quick plug for a summer episode that is coming up. It is all about winter witches in the summer. And thank you to one of our Hearth and Hen members for that suggestion. In our circle gathering last month, she brought up the topic idea, and I was like, hey, yeah, you too? So yes, we are going to have that one very soon. But right now it is all about summer. Litha launches this next phase on our Wheel of the Year, and for many of us, the summer solstice is a celebration of abundance and vitality, growth, fertility, and fire. Our gardens are flourishing, the days are long, the natural world just feels vibrant and alive. Everywhere we look, we can see the results of what has been growing since those first stirrings of spring. But the summer solstice is not simply a celebration of light. It is a lesson about what we do when we reach the height of our own light, what we do when we have built something, when we have grown and stepped into greater responsibility. It's about what happens when we are being asked to lead rather than hide. And that's kind of where I want to spend our time together today. Because this year, when I look at Litha, I find myself looking less at the sun in the sky, like exactly, and more at, what solar energy is trying to teach us overall. Not just about power or success, but about stewardship and responsibility, confidence, protection, and the sacred masculine energy that helps us build something strong enough to last. So wherever you happen to be right now, I am so glad you're here with me. Maybe you are out in the garden, maybe you're walking the dog or driving to work or sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, maybe sneaking a little quiet time before the rest of the household wakes up. However you found your way here today, right now, thank you. Thank you for spending this time with me. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's hang out over the next hour together. Let's talk about sunlight and sacred masculine energy. Let's talk about growth and leadership, responsibility, and what happens when we finally begin to trust what we've built. Let's stand for a little while at the height of the light and see what the wisdom of the summer solstice might have waiting for us there. Welcome to Litha. While I was preparing for this episode and making my notes, I was very aware of how much time we witches spend talking about the moon. Certainly on this podcast as a whole, I do. But overall in our craft, it's all about the moon. I know why we do it. The moon is woven into so much of modern witchcraft. We follow the full moons and the dark moons. We make moon water. We plan our spell work around lunar cycles, pay attention to eclipses. We watch the waning and waxing phases. Many of us feel deeply connected to lunar energy and the feminine mysteries often associated with it. If you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you know I am absolutely one of those people. I love moon magic. I work with moon phases constantly. Heck, I even named my chickens after moon phases, right? And I'm sorry that I'm opening an episode about the sun with a bunch of moon stuff, but I do want to give you a quick story at the end as to why, for me and my witchcraft practice, it made so much sense. I'll tell you more when we are talking about the current moon phase at the end, but right now, let's give the sun the center stage. As I was sitting with the summer solstice energy this year, I found myself wondering why we sometimes overlook this other celestial force that is equally deserving of our attention. Not just as a giant ball of fire millions of miles away, not just as the thing that makes us put on sunscreen, but as a spiritual symbol, as an energetic force and an ancient teacher. And maybe you don't. Maybe you do work more closely with the sun than I do. I believe I needed to give it a little more attention, though, in my practice, just to balance things out. Because Litha is the moment when the sun stands at its greatest height. The days are long right now. The earth is just bursting with life. Gardens are growing and animals are raising their young. Everything feels vibrant and active and alive. And when we begin looking at the symbolism surrounding the sun, we find many of the qualities that have traditionally been associated with healthy masculine energy. I know I mentioned a bunch of these last week: presence, strength, protection, action, responsibility, and consistency, the willingness to show up day after day after day. The sun simply rises and does its work. And maybe that's one of the invitations of the summer solstice, to spend a little time sitting with this solar energy and understanding what it can teach us, to explore how it shows up in our lives, practices, in our relationships, and even within ourselves. Because whether we identify more strongly with feminine energy, masculine energy, or I don't know, somewhere entirely in between, every one of us carries both sunlight and moonlight within us. And right now, Litha may be one of the most beautiful opportunities all year long to reconnect with the sunlight. To really understand Litha, we need to look at where we are standing on the wheel of the year right now. Not from a historical perspective this time, but from an energetic one. Think back to Beltane on May 1st. We had a lot going on with Beltane this year. It was the spark, the ignition, the moment when possibility just burst into life and everything seemed charged with movement and fertility, and creativity, and potential. It was the season of planting seeds, taking chances, stepping forward, and saying yes to growth. Now, fast forward to where we are today. The fire that was first lit at Beltane is no longer a tiny flame. It's here, it's fully established. The seeds have sprouted, the gardens are growing, the days are warm, the world is green, fully green. Life is abundant all around us. This is the season where we can, finally begin seeing the results of what we have been nurturing. Not everything, of course, right? Some things are still growing, some dreams are still unfolding, but there is usually enough progress by the summer solstice that we can look around and say, yes, something is happening here. The wheel has climbed to its highest point. And this is where witchcraft offers us one really beautiful lesson, because the moment the sun reaches its greatest height, the journey back begins. The longest day of the year is also the turning point. The light has reached its peak expression, and from this point forward, even if we barely notice it at first, the days will slowly begin to shorten. Nature reminds us over and over again that nothing remains fixed. Nothing stays at its peak forever. Every season contains the seed of the next season. Every ending contains a beginning. Every beginning contains an ending. And Litha is not simply a celebration of abundance and sunlight. It is also a reminder that transformation never stops. Even here and now, on the brightest day of the year, the wheel is already turning towards whatever comes next. When was the last time you intentionally sat with solar energy? And not just sat in the sunshine or enjoyed a beautiful summer day, but actually spent time thinking about what the sun represents. For me, I'll tell you, it's been a really long time. I think many of us naturally gravitate towards the moon energy. There is something mysterious about it, something quiet and inward. And the moon invites us into intuition and dreams, reflection, emotions, cycles, and hidden things. The sun speaks a different language. Not better, not worse, just different. The sun is warmth and courage. It is energy that says, stand up, take action, move forward. And unlike the moon, which changes its face throughout the month, the sun arrives every day with remarkable consistency. And for me, there's something deeply comforting about that. The sun illuminates and reveals and shines light into places we may have overlooked. It helps us see things clearly. Sometimes that clarity is beautiful, sometimes it is uncomfortable. But either way, the light reveals what is there. I think that is one of the reasons so many ancient cultures viewed solar energy as sacred. Without the sun, our crops fail, seasons stop, life itself struggles to continue. This year, one of the lessons we can grab and work with at Litha is to ask, what would it look like to embody a little more solar energy in our own lives? Healthy confidence and leadership, the willingness to be seen, the willingness to step forward when something needs doing, to protect what matters and bring warmth into a space simply because we are there. I know it's easy, or maybe not easy. We often become very comfortable working in the shadows, the liminal spaces, the moonlit paths, and the hidden places between worlds. Our practices in general work in those spaces. And those spaces are important, but every now and then the wheel invites us to step out of the moonlight and stand fully in the sun. And if you are not super comfortable here, we don't need to be here forever, just long enough to remember that we were never meant to live only in one kind of magic. We are creatures of sunlight and moonlight. And at Litha, the sunlight has something to teach us. I mentioned this story last week, but I wanted to go a little deeper with it today. Many of you remember the tale of the Oak King and the Holly King. It is a beloved story associated with the Wheel of the Year. Traditionally, the Oak King rules the growing half of the year, bringing increasing light from Yule to the summer solstice, while the Holly King rules the darker half of the year, guiding the world from the summer solstice back to Yule. Often, this story gets told as a battle, a struggle between light and dark, summer and winter, growth and rest. But the older I get, the less interested I've become in the idea of one side defeating the other. What if it really isn't a story about a battle at all? What if it's a story about fulfillment? Because when we arrive at Litha, here today, the Oak King has already accomplished what he came here to do. The days have grown longer, the earth is alive, the fields are green and gardens are producing. The birds have built their nests, with a lot of my chickens' fallen feathers. The young animals have arrived. Life is everywhere. His work was successful. And Litha asks us to look around and notice what is already growing, recognize what has already taken root, and appreciate what our energy, attention, and effort and care have helped bring into being. We can look at our own lives this way, too. What have you built this year? Not completed, but built. There's a difference, right? Maybe you have built stronger boundaries. Maybe you have built healthier habits. Maybe you have built a business, a friendship, or a spiritual space. Maybe you have built a garden or a deeper relationship with yourself. Maybe you have spent the last 6 months laying foundations that nobody else can even see yet. I think the Oak King would understand this better than anyone, because growth is rarely an overnight event. The crops don't appear the moment the seeds touch the soil, and we know the harvest does not arrive the day after planting. Everything worthwhile requires tending. And when I look at the symbolism of the Oak King standing at the height of his season, I don't see a warrior celebrating victory. I see a steward looking across the land and seeing life just thriving because of the work that has already been done. I know that is a different perspective. Litha can remind us that we do not have to wait until harvest to acknowledge our progress. Sometimes the growth itself deserves to be celebrated. So, what if we change the story from a battle to a celebration? What if we rewrite things just a little bit so the story still gets told, but with a different layout? What if we said, long ago, before clocks and calendars, before spreadsheets and schedules and all of the ways we measure our lives today, people looked to the land to understand the passage of time. They watched the length of the days, the trees and the animals, and from those observations emerged a story of two kings, the Oak King and the Holly King. The Oak King ruled the growing half of the year. His season began at Yule, when the longest night had finally passed and the light was born again. Each day, under his care, grew a little brighter, a little warmer, and a little longer. As the Oak King's strength increased, snow melted from the fields, buds appeared on branches, seeds awakened beneath the soil, lambs were born in the meadows, and birds began building their nests. Life returned. The Oak King was not merely a ruler of sunlight, he was a caretaker of growth itself. His task was to guide the world from dormancy into abundance. Meanwhile, beyond the edges of the forest, the Holly King waited, patiently watching, knowing his time would come. As the wheel turned and spring became summer, the Oak King's power reached its fullest expression. Gardens overflowed with promise, bees hummed among the flowers, and rivers flowed freely beneath the warmth of the sun. Then came Litha, the summer solstice, the longest day and the brightest moment of the year. And here, according to many versions of the story, the Oak King and the Holly King met in battle. For generations, people imagined a fierce struggle, antlers clashing, branches breaking, one king defeating the other as the wheel turned towards a new season. Perhaps there was a contest, a testing of sorts, a symbolic exchange of power. Maybe the deeper story is not about victory or defeat. Maybe it's about trust. Because when the Oak King looks across the land at Litha, he sees that his work is complete. The forests are alive. The crops are growing. The animals are thriving, and the world is flourishing beneath his care. His season has succeeded. And so, the two kings meet beneath the blazing solstice sun. The Oak King carries an oak branch heavy with leaves. The Holly King carries evergreen boughs that will endure through winter storms. Neither king bows in defeat. Neither king conquers. Instead, they greet one another as brothers who serve the same wheel. One has guided the world into growth. The other will guide it towards harvest, rest, and renewal. The Oak King smiles and places the branch into the Holly King's hands. The Holly King accepts it with gratitude, not because he has won, but because it is now his turn to serve. The wheel continues to turn, and the days will slowly shorten. The harvest will arrive. Leaves will eventually fall, and winter will eventually come. But none of this is failure. It is simply the next chapter. And as the Oak King steps back into the forest, he does not leave in sorrow. He leaves in celebration. He is proud. The work was done. Life is abundant. The world is thriving. What greater success could there be? And somewhere beyond the horizon, he already knows that when Yule returns, the Holly King will hand the light back to him once again, not as a rival, but as a partner, brother, each holding the world in trust until the other's season returns. Okay, well, when talking about the sun, the Oak King, stewardship and protection, we naturally move into the sacred masculine. And I know that can potentially bring up a lot of different feelings for people. For some, it might feel comforting. For others, maybe complicated. And both of those reactions are completely understandable. Many of us have complicated relationships with masculine energy. Not men necessarily, but masculine energy. Sometimes that comes from our fathers. Sometimes it comes from our partners. Maybe it comes from workplaces or authority figures for you, institutions or experiences that taught us somewhere along the way that power was something to fear. But I also think sometimes it comes from the messages our culture has given us about what strength is supposed to look like. Big air quotes around supposed to, please. Because unfortunately, many of us were taught that masculine energy means control or dominance, even aggression. It is the loudest voice in the room. But when I look at the Wheel of the Year, especially when I look at the symbolism of Litha, I see something very different. I see protection and responsibility and structure. I see follow through. I see reliability and stewardship. And most importantly, I see guardianship. The sun does not dominate the garden, it nurtures it. The oak king does not rule through force, he tends the land until life flourishes. The healthy masculine is not about power over, it really is about responsibility for. And when you look at it like that, sacred masculine energy asks different questions. What am I protecting? What am I responsible for? What have I committed to? What needs my consistency? Or maybe what needs my attention? What needs my care? In many ways, this masculine type of energy is less concerned about authority and much more concerned with service. In our community, we are very comfortable talking about intuition, receiving, flow, surrender, dreams, and reflection. Those are beautiful qualities and important parts of our spiritual practices. Eventually, something has to plant the garden. Something has to water it. Something has to repair the fence. Something has to continue showing up long after the excitement of the beginning has passed. And that's sacred work too. That is sun energy, masculine type energy. It is one of the gifts I think Litha has to offer us. Boundaries do not have to be unkind, and sacred masculine energy does not have to be dominating. At its healthiest expression, it becomes the steady hand that tends the fire, protects the village, keeps its promises, and remains present long enough for something beautiful to grow. That feels a lot like the Oak King to me, and very sun energy as well. So I don't actually do a tremendous amount of solar work in my personal practice. I'm also not a witch who closely works with a lot of deities. I know some witches have very deep devotional relationships with specific gods and goddesses, and I think that is absolutely beautiful. It just has never been the primary path of my own practice. I tend to work more with nature, seasonal cycles, moon phases, animal spirits, well, lots and lots of animal spirits, symbolism, and the energy of the wheel itself. But that does not mean I'm not fascinated by mythology, because mythology tells us something really important about the people who came before us. It tells us what they valued, what they feared, and what they depended on. And when we start looking across different cultures, something pretty interesting appears. Human beings have honored solar deities for thousands upon thousands of years. In ancient Egypt, there was Ra, who sailed across the sky each day bringing light into the world. In Greece, we find Apollo, whose radiance became associated with truth, knowledge, and illumination. Among Celtic traditions, we find many stories that honor the power of the sun, seasonal cycles, and the sacred relationship between people and the land. Rather than focusing on a single solar deity, I think many of those traditions emphasize the interconnectedness of light and growth, harvest and stewardship throughout the year. And from our Norse conversations, some of you may remember Balder, whose presence brought brightness and hope to the world around him. Now, I don't bring these figures up because I think everyone needs to rush out and start working with them. That's not really my point. The question that I find more interesting is why? Why do we find solar figures appearing over and over and over again throughout human history? Why did people across different continents and who spoke different languages and had very different cultures all look to the sun with such admiration? And I think the answer is actually pretty simple because they understood something we sometimes forget now. They understood their dependence upon it. Their crops depended on it. Their food depended on it. Their animals and their families depended on it too. Without sunlight, there would be no harvest or thriving forests. Without sunlight, there would be no life as they knew it. So they honored it. Not because they worshipped a giant glowing ball in the sky, but because they recognized the sacred relationship between themselves and the forces that sustained them. Did you actually know that the Norse did not envision the sun as masculine at all? The sun is a goddess, soul. Meanwhile, the moon, Mani, is a god. It's a fun little reminder that cultures throughout history have understood these energies in very different ways. But also, it is the same lesson we find throughout nature-based spirituality, really. Like, pay attention to what supports life. Notice what allows growth and honor what sustains you. Maybe that is why the sun continues to hold such a powerful place on the wheel of the year. Everything, everything living on this planet is connected to it. Well, before we move into the practical side of working with this energy, let's talk about some of the traditional correspondences associated with Litha and the summer solstice. You guys already know I'm not a huge, you must use this exact herb on this exact day kind of a witch. I tend to view correspondences as invitations rather than rules, but they can give us some wonderful ideas for connecting to the seasons. For Litha and our summer solstice, think about the colors of sunlight itself: yellow, gold, orange, bright green, even white. They all fit beautifully with Litha energy. For plants and herbs, many witches work with rosemary, chamomile, St. John's wort, sunflowers, oak trees, lavender, calendula, and thyme during this season. Animals often associated with Litha include bees and butterflies, horses, stags, robins, and of course, any creature that reminds us of vitality and movement and life. The element I think most connected to the summer solstice is definitely going to be our fire, not destructive fire, but creative fire, the fire that fuels action, growth, inspiration, and transformation. Crystals commonly associated with Litha are going to be our citrine, sunstone, amber, tiger's eye, and clear quartz. Energetically, the season is all about abundance, confidence, vitality, leadership, creativity, courage, celebration, stewardship, and gratitude. And if you're someone who likes creating seasonal altars, decorating your workspace, or brewing a special tea to mark the season, these correspondences can be a beautiful way to bring the energy of summer solstice and Litha into your everyday life. But just remember, the most important correspondence isn't something you buy. It really is just going to be your awareness. The sun is already doing the work. The season is already speaking. Our job is simply to pay attention. If you're listening to this episode and thinking, okay, Charlene, this all sounds wonderful and great, but what do I actually do on the summer solstice? Well, I've got 3 simple ideas for you. You do not need a giant ritual or a perfect altar. You do not need to spend money on these either. You simply need to spend a little intentional time with the season. The first one is to watch the sunrise or sunset. That's probably going to be the most Litha thing you can do, really. Choose either sunrise or sunset and just make an appointment with the sun. Bring your coffee, bring your tea. If you're doing a sunset, bring your glass of wine. Bring a journal if you want. Just simply sit. Quietly sit. Watch the sky change. Notice the colors. Feel the warmth and remember that our ancestors have watched this same sun rise and set for thousands and thousands of years. Litha is our time to honor solar energy, and I really do think a really powerful way to honor it is simply to witness it. Second, I have a create a mid-year reflection ritual. I know I have still not done my mid-year check-in episode, but we are, in fact, here. Litha sits almost exactly at the halfway point of the year, making it the perfect time to pause and take a little inventory. Ask yourself, what have I built? What is thriving? Maybe what has surprised me? What needs pruning? Where am I being called to lead? And what am I proud of? Notice that none of these questions ask whether you've completed your goals. I don't think Litha is about completion necessarily. It's about recognizing growth. So take a few minutes to acknowledge how far you have already traveled. And the third is to light a solstice candle. As the evening arrives, light a candle and spend a few moments quietly working with the energy of the longest day. You might grab a gold candle, a yellow candle, an orange candle, whatever you have. That's what you're going to grab, right? And as the flame burns, think about something you would like to strengthen during the second half of the year. Maybe it's a little confidence. Maybe it's courage or health. Maybe it's some creativity. Maybe, just like the sun, it's leadership. Whatever it is, speak that intention aloud and ask the light to help illuminate the path forward. Then simply sit with the flame for just a couple minutes and allow yourself to receive. That's pretty amazing magic too, isn't it? Especially this time of year with summer solstice and Litha. Not doing something. It is just remembering that you are already standing in the light. Oh, I can't let an episode go by without giving my business witches something to think about too. And Litha really may be one of the best business habits on the entire wheel of the year. And not just for hustle and working harder, and definitely not because it is about squeezing 6 months of productivity into the next 6 months. Quite the opposite, actually. Litha arrives almost exactly at the halfway point of the year. And when most of us hit the middle of the year, right now, we immediately start asking questions about our goals. Again, I thought I was going to do my big goal episode last week, but it was not happening. Still, this time of year seems like the perfect time to ask, am I on track? Am I behind? Have I done enough? Do I need to work a little harder? But what if Litha asks us different questions? After all, we were just talking about the Oak King standing in a thriving kingdom, not obsessing over what is left to do or focusing on what is unfinished. The Oak King instead pauses long enough to look around and see what has already grown. There is great wisdom in that, isn't there? Especially for business owners and leaders and creators, entrepreneurs, anyone trying to build something meaningful. So instead of reviewing your goals this Litha, maybe spending some time reflecting on questions would be better. What have I built? Again, not completed, right? Built. What foundations have I created that did not exist 6 months ago? What relationships have I strengthened? What systems have I put into place? What skills have I developed? What confidence have I gained? What is thriving? Like where is life already showing up? It is so easy to get focused on the next milestone that we sometimes can completely overlook the things that are already flourishing. And then, of course, there's the question that every gardener eventually has to ask: what needs pruning? Not everything is meant to grow forever. Some projects have run their course. Some commitments no longer fit. Some ideas sounded wonderful in January, but have become distractions by now, by June. Litha invites us to be honest about those too. And then we arrive at the question that feels especially connected to the sacred masculine energy we've been talking about last week and today. Where am I avoiding leadership? Where am I waiting for someone else to make a decision that is actually mine to make? Where am I shrinking back when I am being called to step forward? I know stewardship is not always exciting. Sometimes it looks like, consistency and having very difficult conversations. Sometimes it looks like creating structure and grinding it out to maintain what has already been built. I think the Oak King teaches us that growth requires vision. The Holly King teaches us that growth requires tending. And successful business, healthy relationships, strong communities, and meaningful lives, well, they require both. So before the wheel turns towards harvest season, just take a moment to stand in your own kingdom. Look around. Notice what is thriving. Celebrate what has grown. Prune what no longer belongs. And then ask yourself, what are you being called to steward during the second half of the year? That feels like very Litha business magic to me. Well, before we wrap things up, I want to return to the summer solstice itself, the longest day, the shortest night, the great turning point on the wheel of the year. Because for all of the flowers, bonfires, celebrations, and sunshine that surround Litha, I think the deepest lesson of this season, or the Sabbath, is often overlooked. The lesson is not simply, look how bright the light is. The lesson is also what happens next. The moment the sun reaches its highest point in the sky, the wheel does, in fact, begin to turn. The light has not failed, and the sun has certainly not weakened, right? We are heading into the hottest times of the year. And don't forget, we've got the Winter Witches in Summer episode coming up, because I know, like many of you, I could just skip over summer and be in fall, winter, and spring all year long. I do not like the heat. I know many of you do not like the heat. So anyways, look for that episode coming up. Like, I gotcha. Yeah, I'm feeling it too. But right now, the season has simply reached its fulfillment. And from that fulfillment, the next chapter begins. There's some incredible wisdom in that, because we tend to spend so much of our lives just trying to arrive somewhere. I do it. You probably do it. We tell ourselves that everything will finally make sense when we reach the goal, get the promotion, finish the project, heal the wound, or maybe find the answer or accomplish the thing we've been working towards. But nature shows us something different, doesn't it? There is no final arrival. There's only movement. There is only the next season and the next cycle, the next transformation. Nothing stays at its peak forever. Not success, not our struggles, not grief, and not joy. Everything moves and transforms. Litha reminds you to savor it, appreciate it, stand in the sunlight for a little while and enjoy what has grown. And if you are standing in a difficult season right now, like I was this time last year, maybe Litha offers a different kind of comfort. This won't stay exactly as it is either. The wheel is turning. It always has been. It always will be. The same wheel that brings summer eventually brings harvest. The same wheel that brings winter eventually brings spring. The same wheel that brings endings eventually brings beginnings. Every season has its place and purpose and wisdom. Maybe that is why we witches spend so much time watching the wheel, because it teaches us how to move with life instead of against it. And on this summer solstice, standing at the brightest point on the year, perhaps the greatest wisdom we can carry forward is this: honor what is here, celebrate what has grown, trust what is changing, and remember that the wheel knows the way. Well, I do have a poem, of course, for our sun energy, our sacred masculine energy theme for today, and the moon update. Ooh, and I'm going to grab that little story about myself with the moon. If you can stay with me, I will be right back. All right, the poem goes. The sun rides high across the sky, while swallows wheel and meadows sigh. The roses bloom, the bees take flight, the world is dressed in golden light. Yet even now the wheel will turn, for every flame must softly burn. So dance and laugh beneath the day, and bless the gifts along your way. For Litha sings this simple tune: hold every season, for none stay soon. The longest day will gently pass, like sunlight drifting through the grass. But what we love and what we share leaves roots of magic everywhere. And though the longest day will end, the light remains where love has been. So raise a cup and give your praise for simple joys and brightened days. Our summer solstice and Litha are happening on June 21st this year, and here we are, again, with another Wheel of the Year celebration falling on a weekend. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Our moon right now on Wednesday, the 17th of June, is a waxing moon, a waxing crescent to be exact. The full moon on Monday might still be giving up a lot of her vibes, but it's growing now and gaining strength. It is waxing. And it will be a waxing moon for Sunday on Litha. What does that mean for us in our practices? Well, a waxing moon and the summer solstice together are actually a pretty powerful pairing. Both energies are about growth, momentum, building, and becoming. The waxing moon is the phase where we begin adding energy into our intentions. We are feeding the seeds we planted during the new moon. We are taking action, gathering strength, and moving towards manifestation. And the summer solstice is doing much of the same thing, right? It is the height of solar energy, the longest day, the strongest light, the season of abundance, vitality, confidence, and creation. Put those two together, we have a pretty powerful opportunity to focus on what we want more of. More joy, more confidence and creativity, more connection, health, and opportunities, more abundance, more of whatever helps us become the fullest expression of ourselves. Now is the energy of tending the garden and watering what is growing. That celebrate what is thriving and consciously choosing where we want our energy to go next. So if you are creating moon water, lighting candles, making a solstice feast, building a bonfire, writing intentions, creating sigils, spending time in nature, or whatever you're doing, simply sitting outside and soaking up the sunlight, this is a beautiful time to focus on what you are calling into your life. Again, ask yourself, what am I growing? What is thriving? What deserves more of my attention? What am I ready to step fully into? because the wheel is turning once again, and this particular turning point arrives with both the sun and the moon encouraging us to move forward. Okay, I mentioned at the beginning that I wanted to share a personal story about being a lunar witch, working with the moon phases, and why I was so drawn to it in the first place. And I know this seems probably a little ironic. I started this solar episode and ended this solar episode with the moon, but here we are. um, the answer of why I was so drawn to it is pretty simple. It gave me an explanation for a way of life I had been living for a very long time. Now, before I learned about lunar practices and moon magic, I had my own name for it. And don't laugh, but I called it the puppy effect. Now, if you've ever raised a puppy, or honestly, I guess any young animal, you probably know exactly what I am talking about. Little puppies have endless energy. They bounce, they run, they play, they zoom around the house like tiny little furry tornadoes. Energy just seems to ooze out of every part of their little bodies. And then suddenly, they crash. Completely. They curl up and fall asleep like someone flipped a switch. A few hours later, they wake up recharged and start the whole process all over again. For years, that is how I felt about my own life. I would work, push, create, build, accomplish, and then I would crash. Not forever, just long enough to recover. Then I would get up and do it all over again. Work, crash. Work, crash. I used to get so frustrated with myself because I didn't understand why I could not maintain the same level of energy all of the time. The only comparison I could come up with was that it seemed that I was operating much like a puppy. And then I discovered moon magic. I started learning about the lunar phases and the natural cycles of energy that we move through every month. I learned that there are seasons for action and seasons for rest, times for growth and times for reflection, moments for building and moments for recovery. And something just clicked. Much like finding witchcraft itself felt like coming home, bringing lunar practices into my life felt incredibly natural. What I had been calling the puppy effect was not a flaw. It was an inconsistency, and it certainly was not something I needed to fix. It was simply a natural rhythm that I hadn't yet learned how to understand. The moon gave me a language for something I had been experiencing all along. And once I understood those cycles, I stopped fighting them. Really, I stopped fighting them and started working with them instead. That has made my practice even more powerful. And really, honestly, talking about solar magic today, the true power is having a balance of both. Okay, you guys, next week. Next week, it is all about poison plants and baneful magic. And I have a bunch of notes ready to go. I also have a personal story about waiting a year and a day to do some baneful magic myself. Till then, my friends, I hope the rest of your week is just perfect and your weekend is everything you need it to be. I will talk with you next week. Thank you for joining me today at Witchy Work Wishes, a place to find your weekly inspiration for bringing your personal witchcraft practice into your business, work, and office. For more information and additional content, please visit me online at witchyworkwishes.com. If you want to send me a personal note, please email me at info@witchyworkwishes.com. And of course, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for Witchy Work Wishes.